Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about job experiences. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what is your best software engineering job experience? Mm, I would say, all things considered, it's the one that the last one I had was it was at a company where I was hired at a pretty big company, and the I knew some people in the company, or rather, I had some history with them, and so the initial reason I was hired was to join what they call the platform team, where the basic idea of that team is that it's a supporting body of people who have because the company was very, very big. It had everything from very junior teams up to very experienced teams, and in that specific company, they had a team that basically was in charge of standardizing like reusable components, creating a library of reusable components for that company, and then basically owning and taking responsibilities for all the non-product related work that was going on. And when I joined that team, after a little while of working, they merged a situation basically, or like an opportunity, where the company needed basically someone to take charge of a project, an internal project, and then converting that into basically an enterprise level application that could not only scale, because the system itself was fairly poorly maintained at the time, due to reasons. I'm not going to dive into that all that much, uh, but there was also this need for, like, they had an entire ecosystem of systems that were, the oldest system that they had was from the 70s, running on like old IBM mainframes and things like that. And so someone needed to figure out, okay, how can we bring all of these sorts of systems together, because the ecosystem was fairly vast of different products, and create a seamless experience between all of these systems, in essence. And well, basically, my manager came to me and he said, "I'm going to promote you." And I said, "Oh, great, thank you. What's happening?" "Well, we're going to make you team lead of that project, and then I want you to create a platform, like an internal systems platform of that project." And I said, "Cool. Are my requirements?" I said, "Yeah, created and this is why I liked working with this guy, because he could literally tell me what he, like, sort of at a high level, what actually was needed in terms that made sense." And he said, "Well, we have all these different systems. Could you create a way for us to basically host all those systems through one interface on one host, and then we need to like being able to actually navigate between these systems through one central domain?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." And he's also said, "Yeah, and make us sure that these guys that are owning this product, help them out, like make this into a scalable system and so forth and so forth." Because like they have got a lot of traction in the company. I said, "Okay, cool, I'll be a politician or like a diplomat." Said and done, went in. Turns out that I was sort of just thrown into this chaotic environment there, where there was like no, like means the standard stuff. There is no documentation. They don't even use like basic agile practices. They literally a Slack channel with a bunch of dudes who basically from one day from another just throw in stuff that they thought would be cool to build. And they had one consultant that sort of like let's just say that he had been worn down by this, and he was quite bitter, I thought, that, well, the system was absolute, yeah, it was never going to scale anywhere, and nobody even told anybody that I was joining and like sort of going to take charge. So there was a lot of like friction and so forth in the beginning, but I got to work. I did the things that I usually do when I'm trying to scale a system, or like I'm trying to basically establish a team or something like that, and it worked pretty well. So we very quickly got more people. Like, they added more people to my team, so I had a few developers that were working with me, and it took, I would say it took about 6-ish months to go from like not a single test like tons and tons of issues over to something that's completely, I vouch for it. There are still issues that could be fixed and so forth, but it's stable in the sense that I would say that the product setup is equal. It rivals, if not more, than your average startup. Basically, it's a very safe setup. It practically always works. We have all the necessary like telemetrics and like the development process, team processes, documentation, like all of the sort of things that you would want, and maybe a little bit even more. So I was very proud over that work that we did. And so what then happens is that my manager comes and says again, basically, all right, we're going to promote you again, and this time we want you to, as I said, like now you've established the system. Now it's up to you to figure out the rest of it, which is basically, okay, all of these different systems, they need to live under one umbrella, and we need to create standards between these different systems. And I go, all right. So my thinking is that we're going to establish a central visual component library. We're going to standardize on like I think we said Material UI or something like that, because it was an internal system, so we didn't need like high levels of customization, which basically brings us to creating a shared theming system, or a shared Material UI theme package or something like that they can share, and then they can use Material UI on each project and just consume the theme. Instead of like having a shared component library or something like that. But we also need that because some of the components are actually like non-standard. They are not like the base components of Material UI. So we established something like that, where more sophisticated components could be shared in a simple way together with the theme. And then it came to like hosting and infrastructure, where basically what I did was that I told them, all right, one of the reasons why we have all these isolated projects and we have these issues with inconsistencies between the systems is because everybody is living in their own silo. They're not accustomed to working as part of a community. So let's establish that community. So what I did was that I created a monorepo. It's just a John Workspaces monorepo, where the folder structure was very simple. We had a packages folder where like we just had packages. Some of them were applications, some of them were shared, as I was saying, like we had two shared libraries at the very least. And then we basically started telling people that, yeah, if you join this project, well, all you really have to do is that you plug yourself in, because it doesn't really matter what frameworks they're using at this time, because the end goal is for us to migrate all the things to the same sort of work framework, like React as an example for being one of the libraries that we wanted them to use, together with Jest and a few other things, right? But as long as you can host your system and build it through our product, like host your source code through this project and build it into a Docker file, because we had already set up GitHub Actions and workflows and standard processes, like all of this other stuff with like logging and all these things sort of for free, with visual regression tests and all this other good stuff that the teams were looking for, right? So they didn't have to do all that stuff from scratch, because I had already set that up together with a few other guys. And so the teams then were convinced basically that, yeah, because either you do this yourself, you set everything up yourself, and the company already is telling you that you're going to do this, so you can do it yourself, or you can just host your code through our project, right? Said and done. We started doing that, and then I set up a deployment system that I thought was pretty nice, all things considered, because we were basically using a Kubernetes cluster on Azure, and we used Argo CD for deployments. And so basically all that was needed was that I created a central a central application that held the root route, where you could as a user go and navigate between the different systems, because we couldn't just merge them right away, because they were vastly different systems visually. And the teams were simply deployed their different pods to like their own projects on Argo CD, and then we just used basic ingress routing between the different projects, but they were all hosted under the same domain. So the experience that basically which we ended with, was that the user could go to one host instead of like 13, 15, like we're talking about like so many systems, and they could navigate between the systems. And then we started migrating each project to the same visual language, and that, I mean, it's still not done. That's going to take a long time. But I was very happy with like the overall architecture. I would say that this is a pretty much a done deal. The only thing that I hadn't figured out, which was a complicated matter, was of course, do we need single sign-on or something like that? Because some of these systems you might want to transition between them, but joint sessions is a complicated thing when all the systems are built as an isolated monolith, which would be like the next leg of that journey. But I would say that this was the best software experience I've ever had, because it had a delicious amount of complexity on all levels. Basically, the only reason it worked was because I had, luckily enough, the right experience to do this, and at the same time I had the trust, the buy-in from my managers and so forth to actually do the thing. And I did have coworkers that understood that I could communicate with them, and we could share a plan and we could work together, and where everybody was all sort of aligned. So all the ducks came in a row, if that makes sense, which yielded quite great results, if I am to say so myself. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's a great situation when you find the right challenge and you have the right circumstances for succeeding on that challenge. And the story is like, the end of the story isn't really finished. It's not really finished. It might be by the time this video comes out, but I can tell you that it was a treat to do this thing, because it's sort of to me it was the dream scenario. Like, the company literally came and just said, we have this gigantic problem, we have no way of fixing it, or like, we have no idea how to do this in an effective way. Could you give us some suggestions? I gave them a few suggestions. They thought, this sounds really good, go and make it happen. That was literally it. Like, I was given basically free reins to within the confines, of course, of the current work framework, which was a big chance. Don't think that I had, like, I could just go, this was a really big chance. I couldn't just go and tell people, go do that, go do that, go do that. No. I had to, as a team, because I was the first person, then they added more resources after I asked for them. I had to build a team that could build the proof of concept that could then show this to other, like the managers, so that they could make other teams sort of see, yeah, we're going to join this platform because Fredrik and the others in that team, they've proven that they can do this thing, which is it was tough. It was really, really tough, but I also loved it. I really did. It was a great way for me to learn quite a lot about how to, well, basically work to work on something that is that literally every single gigantic corporation wants to do. This is what they're all trying to do. They are all trying to take systems that they've usually created maybe 30 years ago, put that into a modern framework of work so that they can scale it further into the future, because they are still paying off a lot of the legacy problems they've had since way back when. This is what a lot of people don't understand with big corporations. They have a big cost that follows them around in terms of legacy systems that needs to migrate to something modern, but they just don't know how to do it usually. It's very difficult to do this. And to be able to do that and show them this is a way that you can do this and it's going to scale, it's going to be sustainable, it was a great treat for me. Have a great day.